Flashbacks. Past players, past legends.
After spending a couple of weeks back from the busted collarbone, and I thought, that's when I thought. So I walked over the road and saw Wally and said, look, I think I might be done, Wally. And he said, yeah, look, well, I'll do what I can for you. And I walked out into the car park, and James Fantasia's in his car just hovering around because he was at Woodville already.
Yep.
And they trained Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And so so he happened to be just popping through this day, and still mates with a lot of us, of course, and still is to this day, and he runs the joint. So, but he said, look, I'll let Blighty know. And so I thought he was joking. And by the time I got home, Johnny Reid had already rung my home, and cut a long story short, signed, sealed and delivered by the Friday, played on the Saturday in the reserves for Woodville, and off we went. So, yeah, a couple of weeks after that, I think it was Gary Williams that was playing fullback for Woodville at the time, popped his hamstring, and Blighty said, look, you'd be prepared to play defensive, play back. And I said, mate, I'll play anywhere if I get a league game. So, and the rest is history. I went and slotted into fullback and had a really good finish to 86. We played in that final series, and I played fullback and stood some great full forwards, and we did okay. Should have gone on, of course, and won it, but that didn't happen.
Yeah.
We were just too good, and they went back to back, 85, 86. So
I do want to ask you, so the elimination final, Norwood,
Jim Teal,
the late Jim Teal.
that was tough.
Yeah, how did you and Fanta sort of cope with that? And so it was a little bit different for you. I'm trying to see where you were at, because I've spoken obviously to quite a few of the Nord guys, and they said a few of the older guys who were close to Jim were just an absolute mess, and basically we were not. And Barmy admits if he had his time again, he would totally do that whole thing differently. He said he was very open. He said he didn't do it well. And then
look, how do you do it?
Exactly.
That's uncharted waters.
Well,
mate.
Port did it with Anthony Williams, and he said, I couldn't do it that way, but he does regret that day. And so, but it would have been so where the Nord guys went in front of the scoreboard.
I remember that. Yeah.
So I'm sure you would have been looking over with Fanta, sort of thinking, geez,
So I remember. So both James and I, we were discussing during the week, can we wear armbands, black armbands or something? We just didn't know what to do. And I just vaguely remember, I think Blighty said, look, we're not individuals. We're a team. And it's sort of club policies, I suppose, when they do that sort of stuff. So I think Blighty just thought it's best for the Norwood Footy Club to do their thing, and we've got to respect that. So I don't think. I mean, I know James and I both stood there for that minute silence together, and we were both. It was really difficult. It was really difficult, and then once the siren sounded, we sort of got on with it, and I remember I stood Peter Lachlan that day, and I know he was. I felt for him because he was probably Jimmy's best mate or thereabouts, and So that was a tough day, and it was a terrible, terrible accident, of course, and sadly missed Jim, that's for sure.
So let's go to the next week. Incredible crowd, all of a sudden, Woodville's everyone's second side. Everyone's jumped aboard the Woodville bus. So probably that and the Escort Cup game were similar, 30-odd thousand, and there way more people barracking for Woodville. Describe those couple of games. It was pretty remarkable.
Look, it was the whole build-up. Like, I think round 10, Woodville was still on the bottom of the ladder. So it just turned on a dime, and I think the record shows, and Malcolm, you check this, I think out of the last 13 games, I think we won 11 of them.
11,
something like that, and we were winning games from losing, impossible positions, like 7 or 8 goals down, and still winning. And so this sort of stuff, this belief just grew and grew within the group, and I was lucky enough to jump on board as it was just turning, and I could sense this I could sense this club was on the move. The vibe and the passion around the group was just incredible, which is what you need to win premierships. And you know when you've got a group that's single-minded, and unfortunately we didn't go the whole way, but obviously that game against Norwood, and then we beat Norwood in the first elimination final, which is one of the powerhouses of the competition. Then we play Port Adelaide in the next week, and we beat them in an absolute cliffhanger, one of the great games of footy.
Was a great game. Yeah,
it was an incredible game, and I was lucky to play with some great players, and none more than Stephen Nichols and these types, and Kevy Harris and Ronnie Fuller and Andrew Taylor and Andrew Rogers, Richard Champion. All these fellas are all. It was just an amazing group, and it's just we weren't far off, just going going all the way. And
was you kicking for goal the next week against? You should have beaten Glenelg in that prelim final. You blew the last quarter. I reckon it was 2-7 or 2-8. I reckon on memory it was.
Yeah, we I won't name names, but the blokes running into open goal, missing from 25 metres out, set shots. It was very uncharacteristic, because what we'd done previously was kick all those and bury teams. And unfortunately the Bays always had a little bit of the wood on us, and that wasn't the first time they hurt us. And it had happened over a reasonable period of time, and they did it to us again that day. But look, at the end of the day, they were probably the best. I guess they were potentially the best team. Well, they were the best team because they won the premiership. So. But that was certainly, from my perspective, that my little window of probably as close as I got to as to playing in a grand final and possible premiership in at that level. So,
I know that one eats it. Obviously hang around a few of those of the Woodville boys, Detto and Jack and Ronnie Fuller have always considered that was the one which got away. And
86 for sure. And touching on what you were saying earlier in terms of the whole country got on board, it was. There wasn't a paper it wasn't a newspaper in the land that wasn't sort of, hadn't got on board with it. And, Blighty's got them up, and Blighty had the profile, of course. And once they jumped on, it just went on and on. We kept winning, and we got to nearly got all the way. So, it was exciting times, and special times for sure.
Well, you've had the 3 Bs, Barassi, Balm, Blight.
Yeah.
Doesn't get it much better than that.
Well, then I had Russell Ebert, of course.
Of course, yeah.
So, in actual funny story, I had an interview with the Could Have Been Champions a couple of years ago, and that's exactly. And I said that they thought that was quite funny. Went through those names, and it is. I'm very lucky to have come across all those guys and played under those fellas. They're icons of our game, and Russell Ebert was so good to me. He nurtured me and taught me a lot, and had 3 years under Russell as well. So, Barmy and Blighty, and great group of blokes for sure.
Was Blighty as eccentric with Woodville as he was, portrayed with the Crows and Geelong?
He could be pretty ruthless as well.
But was he innovative as far as trying different things and thinking outside the square?
Yeah, he was always thinking outside the square, whether it be trying to, create things during the week to make training interesting, or, break it up in the middle of winter. We'd go and play, go and do 10-pin bowling or table tennis, or just go for a walk somewhere. He was always thinking outside the square, and wasn't scared to give you a bake when need be either, as we all know. So, Blighty was a big influence on me, of course, and gave me that opportunity at full back, of course. So I'll be forever indebted to him for that, for sure.
And going through still then, so 87, what was the 87 season like?
So 87, after 86, we were flying. We're like around 10. I think we were second or even on top, round 10 or something or thereabouts from memory. And then the wheels just fell off. So I was guilty of that as well. My form slipped, and I ended up in the reserves as well. And and I think Blighty's probably had his, maybe he was done as well. He'd been there 5 years, and his interests were, I remember his work was taking him away to Sydney, and so Johnny Reid was taking some Friday night training. So it was a factor. We just couldn't get it back on track. I think we played in the final. We made the finals, but we were bounced out in straight sets, I think, and it was a real shame. It's hard to put your finger on why we couldn't keep it going, and I think maybe injuries to a few blokes as well. Maybe I can't. It's a lot. Yeah, it's just one of those funny football things, how things can turn and deteriorate very quickly, and that's exactly what happened. Yeah, and then of course Blighty resigned at the end of '87, and '88 came around. So yeah,
and so go through '88, and then of course the Escort Cup, and I've loved how Dedo and a few of those Woodville guys have made a big thing of that Escort Cup. Not downplaying, like making it, oh, well, that's the only thing we won, but just playing it the appropriate respect. And Dedo was very firm on that at Russell's funeral, at the wake afterwards, and I really respect that.
Yeah, look, it was the whole build up to that was quite fascinating as well, because remember, Russell had been sacked by Port Adelaide at the end of '87 on the back of Jack coming back. So there was lots of Port Adelaide supporters that theoretically, cut up their memberships and blah, blah, blah. And then ironically, of course, with the Escort Cup competition, and back in those days, the Escort Cup comp was a ripping pre-season comp. And, it was for Port Adelaide, it meant nothing, but for the rest of us, it was a premiership. So, but, I remember leading into that final, the build-up was all about, Jack versus Russell. So, and it created some momentum, of course, and generated the public's interest, and we ended up with a pretty big crowd there.
Oh, it was 30 something. It was 33, I think, on memory.
Yeah, on a Tuesday night on a Tuesday night for a trial game, unheard of. So, and look, we had a great night that night, and had a good win, and that was Woodville's only ever piece of silverware as such. So it was pretty special, and we did have a reunion for that back in 2018, and Russell. One of the things that happened that night, Russell being Russell, and so dedicated and blah blah blah, he said, "Righto, we're not going to celebrate tonight. Everyone's got to go home to bed, and we'll celebrate after we beat whoever it is on Saturday. I think it might have been playing West Adelaide at home or something." And so, okay. So that was all pretty disappointing. There was like 400 or 500 people back at Woodville Oval, and all chafing at the bit to see the players get presented to the hordes. And of course, it didn't happen. And anyway, they were all pretty disappointed. Obviously, we were disappointed. Russell didn't understand it at the time. But when we had this reunion back in 2018, it was quite cathartic for Russell, because it was really the first time we'd actually been truly presented to the Woodville faithful, how many years later. So, and he said that night, that afternoon, and he was able to say his piece and apologise to us, and apologise and admit that it was a mistake. He said, and as you know now, you've got to celebrate your successes as you go. Otherwise, why you're doing it? So he was. It was really. Matter of fact, he gave me a call that night, because I was one of the lads that was pulled that night all together, and he rang me and he said, "Desi, that's one of the best footy functions I've ever been to," and he really loved it. So I mean, as I spoke to some Port Adelaide blokes over the years, they said, "You celebrated an Escort Cup premiership? Seriously?"
Yeah.
But there you go.
It's one of the last times, obviously, that Woodville was successful in its history. Then, as we start heading towards 1991, the merger, or 1990, the merger was obviously on the agenda, and then in 1991 it happened.
Yes, I think it was. I think we knew before the end of 1990 that we were merging. We ended up playing West Torrens,
in the last
ironically,
game.
in the last game at Adelaide Oval, and Alan Jakovic played that day, and I think he kicked 13 to bring up his 100 for the year, and we gave West Torrens a serious touch up that day as well. But unfortunately, we didn't make the finals that year. I think we missed out as well, so which was disappointing. Then the merger, of course, and something like 90 to 100 blokes there on that first training session, and Barmy got the I think they all put in for the job, including who else? I think Andy Bennett was West Torrens, and then of course Russell was us. So they all put in for it. and unfortunately, for those guys, or whatever they did, they missed out. But Barmy and Brucey Winter got the gig and got the ball rolling, and it all went pretty well. So we played in the finals of '91 and got knocked out. I don't know where we finished. I don't know whether I think we played 2 finals, so we must have finished in the top 3, I guess. Can you? And then, of course,
well, did you win the Foundation Cup that year as well?
I don't reckon.
No,
I couldn't be sure. Yeah, I don't think so. No. We might have. I know we played in a couple of finals and we lost. I reckon we lost 2 finals. Whether one of those was with Woodville West Torrens, I can't remember.
Yep.
But we only ever won the one that I remember.
That might have been '93. It had a fantastic year in '93.
Yeah, that's right. I think they won. I think in '93 we won everything. Yeah.
Yep.
But I was done and dusted by then, Pete.
Obviously that first training session with a million people obviously rolling out. How was the sorting organised with obviously Barmy and some of the coaches, because it would have been pandemonium at one stage.
Yeah, so I mean there was numerous trials. I remember that, and then you'd come to training every other night, and if you were still there, you were still there, and you'd look around and certain blokes weren't there, so you just assumed, oh, he must have got cut. So there was no real public stuff. It was just a gradual a burn, I think, and Barmy and Bruce just went through the numbers, and when they did it, I wouldn't know, but it was a tough job, and they probably made some good calls and some bad calls. The lads that probably could have stayed, should have stayed, and there's some of us that stayed, maybe shouldn't have stayed. So it's difficult when you've got that many numbers in a pretty short space of time to get it right. So at the end of the day, they did a good job.
And it laid the foundations, obviously, for '93.
Yes, absolutely.
And of course, in the end of that '91 season, Scotty Morford ended up stranded on 99 goals too.
Well, he shouldn't have. He kicked about 10 points, I think, that night. But you're right, Malcolm. He couldn't quite get that 100 through the big stick. So, he was a defender turned into a full forward. Unlike myself, I went from forward to defence. So there you go. But he was a fantastic forward. There's no doubt.
Of course, from Woodville West Torrens, did you go straight out to Kilburn from there, Des?
So what happened was, I played '91. I started '92, did all the pre-season, and
that's right.
And then I had this chronic Achilles thing, which was just literally couldn't put my heel on the ground. I remember that, and then I just thought, you know what, I think I've had enough. I was 33 and just about done. So I actually retired, and that was it. So the funny thing was, I did an interview with Ken Cunningham and Cornsey, I suppose, or whoever was, or Hooksy, I can't remember now. And after the interview, within half an hour, I had a phone call from Phil Gallagher, and I hope Phil doesn't mind me telling this story, but Norwood felt that I still had something to offer, which was a wonderful compliment. So I ended up having a meeting with Neil Craig at his home there in Hyde Park, and we had a chat, and then we both went away, and I had to think about it, and I just didn't feel I had the emotional energy to go again and whatnot. And so I said thanks, but no thanks. And ended up going out to the Barossa and Light League actually, and had a couple of seasons out there with Williston, and played under Jamie Thomas out there, and also the second year Terry Barch, who's
Norwood man as well.
Norwood functions as well. Yeah, so they were 2 really enjoyable years. Unfortunately, we should have won a flag, but didn't. That's just the way it goes out there. And then in my last season, I won't bore you too much, I ended up at Kilburn with Tony Roach, and that was a close mate of mine, and probably my second cousin, Desi Hicks, was there, and he talked me into having one more year, and which I did. And
was that Desi Hicks you'd played with at Woodville?
Yes, same one, yeah. And Hicksy was also at Sturt as well. So but we had a fantastic year, and they'd lost the grand final the year before, so they weren't far off it. And we ended up, so my last game was against, I think it was Port District's grand final premiership on Adelaide Oval. I thought, you know what, that's not a bad way to go out. So that was my last game, 1994. So
All right, a couple other things. So did you meet your wife over here or from Melbourne originally, or?
Over here, met Lorraine here.
Lorraine here,
We met it at some a nightclub. It might have been from memory. I think it was.
No, you didn't live with. It was only with the Oaks where you dominated, Des. Yeah, we'll leave that alone.
Yes.
And in the business side, work-wise, full compliment to you. You worked your way up at National. You were the manager of the branch in the Burnside shopping centre there. And don't worry, my mother-in-law still thinks you're the best bank manager there ever was.
Absolutely.
And then you went from there and worked your way up through Qantas. So full credit to you there, Des, that you ended up pretty high up at both.
I only ever had 2 jobs, Malcolm. A bit boring, but no, it was good. No, I had 20 years with the NAB, National Bank, and then ended up things got a bit tough on the home front with the kids, and Lorraine was a flight attendant, so travelling and she was international, so it got really difficult with my hours at the bank. So we had to make a decision whether I keep going with my career or she goes with hers, and basically because of the staff travel, I said, well, you're not giving your game away. So I ended up resigning from the bank and then scored a job as a baggage handler at Qantas.
That's
right. That was fantastic. I loved it because it was just you just went in and you just did your job and you didn't have to take anything home. So I really enjoyed that. And then sort of because I guess my finance and background and understanding of computers and things, I found my way into the back office and resource and planning areas of the work group. So, which I did for the last probably for 17 years of that. So I only did baggage handling for about 18 months to 2 years, I suppose. And
I do remember you doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. So and I did the catering as well, night cleaning of the aircraft. So I started from the very bottom, which was great.
Hey, righto, Des. So
we finish off
as we finish off the same way. Best players played with and hardest opponents, and you can go whichever way you like on this, mate.
Oh, gee. Have I thought about this? Let me think. Well, I always had some difficulty against the big Rudy Mandermaker when I had to stand him out at Central Districts, and not only did I have to put up with him, but also the supporters out there. So that was pretty intimidating. And once he got up and going, the big fella, he was hard to stop. And the other problem he had, he could kick him from anywhere. And so he was certainly one of the tough ones. Of course, Scotty Hodges, I stood Scotty. He was incredibly strong and pound for pound, probably the strongest full forward I ever stood. And and then Johnny Fidge, he was a
similar
superstar as well. I remember Dale Woodhall for West Adelaide. Tony Modra was floating around, but I didn't stand him. I mean, Robbie Lynch stood in the day he was running around. So, but some great forwards, and then what was the other question? The
best players played with. So you've got to. You've got to go for a few different angles.
You don't have to go one or two. You can go 4 or 5.
Go where you like.
Look, well, there's a standout, obviously, and there's one for Melbourne, Robbie Flair, and there's a tie for the other 2 for mine, and that'd be or probably three, I guess, or 4. Actually, it's 4. It's hard to go past Michael Aish, Neville Roberts, Keith Thomas, and Gary McIntosh. I mean, all those blokes. I mean, Neville played for Richmond, of course, and we all know Gary should have and could have, if he wanted to, do what he wanted to do. And Keithy, of course, had some time at Fitzroy and cut his teeth beautifully there. And who else I say?
What about Woodville-wise and that side of things, mate?
A standout for mine, because I was standing up the other end, was definitely Stephen Nichols as a forward. And then, of course, Alan Jakovic was an absolute freak. He could kick him from anywhere. And just could turn on a dime, and it was a nightmare to stand. And when we had practice matches at training, it was a nightmare. So I felt for my colleagues up the end trying to keep him under control. Well, we also had, Ralphie Sewer and Kevy Harris was a juggernaut when we were going well in '86 and so forth. So I've had some play with some fantastic players. Richard Champion went on and did well up north with Brisbane, of course. Yep. And of course back in my Melbourne days, as I said, Robbie Flower was probably the number one, Gerard Healy he debuted the same year as me in '78, and I also played. I'm not saying he's one of the greatest, but one of the most interesting characters, of course, was Mark Jackson.
Yes.
I played five of my 6 games next in the forward pocket, standing next to him. So,
geez, that would have been interesting.
All he kept saying was, "Desi, get out of my way!"
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was an interesting. I actually played the day he did the handstand and the donkey kick with Kelvin Moore.
Kelvin Moore, yeah.
That was it. I think that was at Princess Park from memory, and so there's been some characters along the way. So and it's been a great journey.
Just to finish us off, mate, we'll get you out of here on this one. You've obviously played under some great coaches. I know you probably can't pick one of favourite, but maybe 3 of the favourite coaches that you've played under.
Well, yeah, favourite coaches, yeah. Look, they've all had their pluses, of course, and they're all true champion coaches in their own right. It's hard to, really difficult. Probably for mine because I had probably Blighty and Russell for mine, I guess, because I played most of my senior footy under those guys and seemed to gel and feel. At the end of the day, coaching is a difficult thing, and as a player, if you feel comfortable under a coach, you're going to perform better, and for whatever reason you don't feel that comfortable under others, that affects you mentally, I think. So so they're probably Blighty and
I reckon you better give Roach a mention, otherwise he'll bloody be ringing. He'll ring me and abuse me for not him and Gav Lauder, Cork Gav Lauder. Yes, you had the reunion of that one.
Yeah, that was great day. Yeah, we had a reasonable contingent of our '94 premiership side, and Roachy was there, of course, and he certainly ran a tight ship, and which you needed to at Kilburn in those days. Trust me. So he was a fabulous coach, and
umpiring in front of the Mound Men's one of my most interesting experiences ever in sport. Desi, yes.
Going on the pub crawl after the premiership win was mine with the Mound Men.
With the Mound Men, geez, I don't reckon I would have survived that one.
One or two of them. Yeah. No.
Yes.
Yeah, they were good days for sure.
Hey, say hello to your son as well. Say hello to Lorraine. Yes. Always enjoyed Lorraine's photos for your trips away. Kept us all entertained. So especially the Lord's ones, etc. So all the best, mate. Greatly appreciated, Des.
No worries, Malcolm, and thanks, Peter. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us, mate.
Catch up soon.
Cheers,
thanks, Des.
Thanks, boys. Cheers, Malcolm.
And we thank Des there for his time, and in particular the Woodville Premiership in 1988. They're one of the last successes for the Woodville Football Club, but against the old enemy of Port Adelaide.
Yeah, and Ian Detman sort of leads that charge with making sure that's celebrated, and trust me, there's one thing Ian Detman's good at. It's
celebrating.
It's Detto's a gun.
Certainly going back over some of the footage and watching some of it, because you do get with this past players, past legends segment, you get an opportunity to go back and watch some of the football. Unbelievable, Footy Park back in the day, night football.
It was incredible. It was 30-odd thousand to a pre-season game on the Tuesday night. When Woodville got in that situation, everyone jumped the board. Yeah, so it was extraordinary.
Fantastic sport. We thank Des once again for his time, and look forward to catching up with him at a past players, past function somewhere in the future.
Liking this podcast? Please like, rate, and subscribe.